exactly. Or we can definitely talk about holidays later on, right? So welcome everybody who's just joined. We're just going to wait a couple of seconds for everybody to actually join. In the meantime, you will hopefully see a poll on your screen that we would be really, really keen for you to answer. So yeah, question is, what changes do parents want to see into Q3 and Q4 of 2022 for parents in the finance sector? So the options are accessible childcare options, more remote or hybrid working, better work-life balance, and family-friendly culture. So, I mean, panelists, if I can just flick it across to you, first of all, just very quickly, where would you want to see kind of most change? Dominique?
I would say the childcare options. I think the governmental policies that people are driving around more affordable childcare. I think people have to often weigh up, do I want to have a child, or what's my income, cost of having a child versus my income? And I think it can cause problems both in turning to work and also in having a baby in the first place.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Thank you. Hester, how do you feel about that?
I think I'd absolutely agree with Dominique, definitely. I mean, I looked, so I've just started my NCT, as people on the panel know. I'm going off to have a baby shortly, and there was definitely a sort of trend to older demographics, and I think about, I'm very empathetic of the challenges that people have going through that. So I think the cost of childcare is pretty extortionate, and I think if you're trying to balance working full time around that as well, there's a lot of challenges. So nurseries run from 8 till 6. That's not always practical for people. There's a lot of juggling that needs to be done. So I'm very much with Dominique in terms of looking at those models.
Yeah, absolutely. How about the rest of you? Jana, how would you feel about that?
I think I'm more going for the child-friendly environment, and it's probably the most difficult to change society in a way that they are open to all different kinds of setups, including children, parental leave, elderly care. It doesn't matter actually which topic, but more inclusiveness in different lifestyles is difficult to bring into the society. So it's probably difficult for the last 2 quarters of this year, but it's still something we should aim for.
Yeah, brilliant. And just quickly, I suppose, yeah, Laura and Ali, how do you feel about this poll?
I would say for me, the more remote / hybrid working, which I think COVID has thankfully given us. But for me as well, that helps with the childcare options, because as Hester said, our nursery is 8 to 6, and that would not be possible to get to work and back from work on time if it wasn't that we were working from home 10 minutes away. So for me, I think maybe not more, but that remote and hybrid working definitely is a key thing for me in 2022.
Great.
Yeah, I agree with Laura on the remote hybrid working, especially if you're in finance. Often you work with global offices, and you need that flexible time. We have offices in USA. We're often speaking to people in New Zealand because we use an accounting system from there. So flexible hours really helps, because you can also just have some time with your child when they come home, put them to bed, and then you can pick up emails and work a bit more in the evening, because it actually suits your role, and you can have meetings with senior people in, say, the USA, etc. So for me, it's hybrid flexible working.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, that's an interesting kind of topic to kind of kick things off with. So, I think we'll kind of kick off now. So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first Broadgate Social Parenthood in Finance event. So today we're going to be discussing parenthood in the workplace, and I'm joined on the panel by 5 inspirational senior female finance leaders. So you can expect about an hour of panel discussion with hopefully a live Q&A throughout, and then about half an hour of networking for those who wish to continue the conversation further. Have to let you and make you aware that this is being recorded and will be uploaded onto our Broadgate Social YouTube channel, so you can access this and other webinars that are going to be formulating a podcast with the audio on our Broadgate Social Spotify channel. So just an introduction about myself. So my name is Amal Steele and I head up the UK accounting and finance division here at Broadgate. So my team places qualified finance individuals into C&I and financial services businesses across the UK. So having spent nearly 16 years in this industry and being a mother of two and not long having returned from my second maternity leave, I really wanted to explore the topic of parenthood in the workplace, as well as create a community and network within the world of finance. So here at Trinovo, our group mission as a business is to build diversity, create inclusion, and encourage workplace innovation. And that's kind of built into, the fabric of our thinking. So I felt there was no kind of better time to introduce our first webinar on this topic, and also kind of coinciding with International Women's Day and Mother's Day. Just a couple of stats that I wanted to kind of share, which kind of got me thinking about this in the first place. So, I think just thinking about board level members on the FTSE 100. So currently, 38% of the FTSE 100 board members are women, while women account for 35% of FTSE 250 board members, but that's actually versus a target of 33%. The representation across the FTSE 100 and 250 has actually risen by 50% in the last 5 years. So there's generally a kind of positive shift. However, only 8 of the 100 leading UK businesses are led by women, and 15 of those are CFOs and FDs. So it got me thinking as to how we can inspire women across finance in its entirety by creating this wonderful community of female leaders. My hope is that we can, all learn from each other. We can share our visions, experiences, and values, and today, specifically around parenthood. But also enable anybody listening to feel empowered in having a career and also being able to be a parent at the same time. We want the discussion to be as engaging as possible for everybody. So if you have any questions for our panel throughout the webinar, please do feel free to ask them in the side panel or in the Q&A section, and we will get through as many of these as possible. Before we actually kick off the actual event, though, I would like to introduce you to the incredible and wonderful Lindsay Mcdonald, the CEO of Magic Breakfast. So hopefully some of you will have noticed that this is, a donations-based event, which is completely voluntary, by the way. But Magic Breakfast is a charity that I work with very, very closely over the last kind of few months. And we felt there was absolutely no better charity to support for this event. The work that they do genuinely changes the lives of so many children across the UK. So I'm just going to hand you over to Lindsay, who's going to give you an introduction for the next couple of minutes. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having us and for supporting the charity and just letting us bring some awareness of the work that we do. So I think it really couldn't tie in better to the event, actually, in terms of Magic Breakfast is about ensuring that no child in the UK is too hungry to learn. And devastatingly at the moment, there are 2.5 million children and young people in the UK who are showing up to school, living in homes where there is food insecurity. That might mean that the last meal that they had was potentially their free school meal at lunchtime, all the way through until lunchtime the next day. And I know for me personally, if I've not had something to eat, if I'm, my tummy's grumbling, then I am not focused, and I'm definitely not making best use of my learning and the environment and the school. And also the behavior of children when they are hungry. Understandably, it's not going to be as settled, it's not going to be as conducive to learning. So Magic Breakfast was set up not just to make sure that children and young people were fed and they were given nutritious and filling breakfast, but also that they were not too hungry to learn. So currently we support 215,000 children and young people, approximately every single day, all across England and Scotland. And we are working to, end child morning hunger as an issue here in the UK. And one of the things that I think is really, linked to and connected to the work you were talking about today, Amal, is the fact that we're all about addressing that workplace diversity gap and the social mobility challenge, because by providing breakfast, actually children's attainment levels are proven to increase. So schools where we have a magic breakfast program, we're finding that children from maybe more disadvantaged backgrounds where they have a bit of an attainment gap are catching up by up to 2 months over the course of a single year. So I mean, breakfast sounds like a small thing, but actually it's unlocking the potential of that day, unlocking the potential of that term, that year, and ultimately that child and their future. So I'm very mindful. I mentioned to the panel beforehand, my in real life virtual planning is not yet at its A game in terms of 2022. So I am in a public space, so I won't take too much time. But there's loads of information on our website, and please feel free. I'll be staying for the next little while. Any questions that you've got about our program and about our work, delighted to answer them. But just a huge thank you, and delighted that this is a topic that's kind of getting focus and priority from the top, ultimately, because this will eventually filter down and through the systems, put pressure on the education system, put pressure on our politicians to ensure that we do have the talent, the skills, and the opportunity for all children and young people to be learning and gaining the benefit of their education. So thank you.
Oh, Lindsay, thank you so much. I mean, as I said, I will reiterate it again. They are just the most incredible charity. Next time you buy a tin of baked beans, have a look on the side, because you'll see Magic Breakfast on there. But yeah, anybody, and if you feel that you are able to donate, please do donate. And Broadgate as well. We will match all donations as well, Lindsay, as well. So so that's kind of our commitment to you. But no, let's kind of kick things off. So what I'm going to do now is ask the panel to introduce themselves and just give themselves a little bit of a bio. So I'm going to work around my screen, which is the easiest thing for me to do. So Dominique, if I could come to you first, please, that would be great.
Yeah, so I am Dominique. I work at a company called Parental Brands, which you might not have heard of, but it has lots of household brands. So Speedo, Berghaus, and Aless. You might know it as a Lessie. It's not a Lessie, it's a Less. So we own those brands and a few others. And I head up the finance function there, so I'm the director of finance. I have a 4.5-year-old daughter called Jocelyn, who is incredible. And I have a little boy due on Mother's Day, so in 5-6 days' time. So you will see me bouncing up and down. That's because it's the only way I'm currently comfortable on my ball, but that's me. And Mel, I think you wanted me to share stories about being a parent and working. And I've got so many, I'll keep you all for hours. So if you ever want to catch up about lots of parent stories, we can do it out of hours. I won't keep you all. I've got many. Hilarious.
Oh, thank you so much.
No worries.
Thank you so much. You're incredible. The fact that you are, as I said, 39 weeks pregnant, bouncing on your ball. Thank you so much for attending. So that's amazing. Laura, over to you next, if you wouldn't mind.
Hi, I'm Laura. So I'm the finance director for Alexa Chung. I have spent primarily most of my career in fashion retail for big and more in the latter years for smaller companies, sort of transforming their finance teams and building their teams. I think I've quite a passion for building teams that are happy and doing a good job. My number one sort of motto in life is if you're happy in your job, you'll do a good job. So I think that's key for me. I have an 18-month-old daughter called Willow, and who is incredible. She's changed my life. But I think I guess it's not funniest, but I think for me, the realization that I'm no longer the boss of this family is probably the funniest thing that's happened. And I saw this thing I shared on my Instagram about a month ago that was like, I want to raise strong, independent, strong women who know their own mind, but just not while I'm raising her. And I think that is exactly how I feel. I'm like, oh my God, she's me, and I'm really annoying. But she's an incredible little thing. So yeah, that's me.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. I think anyone who's got daughters, I do as well, can affiliate with that. So thank you so much for that introduction, Laura. Ali, if I may come to you now.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Ali Amayani. I'm the CFO for Digital Theatre. It's an online learning tool that we sell to secondary schools upwards to universities. Prior to this, I was 10 years in live events. I qualified at Deloitte. My accent is still very strong. I'm from South Africa. My husband and I moved here about 13 years ago. I have a little 6-year-old boy. His name's John. And I think we've got lots of funny stories during peak COVID time, right? The homeschooling days. I was on a very sensitive call about data protection, arguing with our CRM provider about data protection. And my 6-year-old son came in and very loudly whispered, "Mommy, I just had the biggest poo." Ever. It was just one of those moments where it's just like, this is really hard to mix these two worlds. But fortunately, the other side saw the humor in it, and they were fantastic about it. But it was just one of those moments, which I think a lot of parents during COVID times can relate to, of children walking in during meetings and video calls and everything. So
it's like that video, I think, that kind of went viral on the BBC a few years ago, didn't it? Yeah. So yeah, exactly. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that story as well, Alison. Jana, if I can come to you now, please. And hello from Basel. So yes. So Jana from Switzerland.
Hi from Switzerland. My name is Jana Eisenbrand. I work in finance for the last about 15 years, currently as the CFO of Artidis. Artidis is a startup company in its 5th year, working on diagnostic of cancer, a very really important topic for me personally as well. I have a 3-year-old son, Tom. And Tom really changed our life. It's me as a manager as well as our kind of being at home together, our small environment changed. It's absolutely that he is the king of this family. And what I really like is he's actually using our phrases currently. So every day you kind of have a mirror in front of you telling you what actually stupid phrases we sometimes use, and he's copying that, and it's the funniest thing for both of us at home as parents to kind of get that reflection day over day. We learned a lot from him, actually.
It's amazing. You've got to be careful with what you say sometimes they get to a certain age, right?
Yeah, it starts now.
Exactly. Thank you so much for the intro, and finally, but certainly not least, Hester, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mel. So I'm Hester Scott and I'm the CFO of Lord Adventure. I'm conscious that many people will not have heard of Lord Adventure, although we discovered that Dominique's husband actually works at Lord Adventure this week. So that's a small world. But we're a FTSE 250 listed company. We're an investment trust with a professional services business. And we provide all sorts of services from pension trustee through to corporate trustee to COSEC. So if you need any sort of governance services, then reach out to us. We probably service them. From a personal perspective, I'm the mum of a 12-year-old. He turned 12 yesterday, and I have a little one on the way. So I've got 8 weeks to go until we have our first baby girl. So I'll be reaching out to these lovely ladies for some tips on how to deal with that. And I was sharing with these ladies today, for my son's birthday, in sort of typical at the moment disorganized fashion, I was busy wrapping birthday presents at 11 o'clock on Saturday evening, and we'd agreed we'd get him an iPad for schoolwork and those sorts of things, and I opened the Amazon box ready to wrap the iPad up really quickly to discover that he'd got 6 Homes and Gardens magazines to help with all his home decor. And so that was somewhat stressful, but thankfully my little boy has a good sense of humour, and he found it pretty hilarious when I pointed him to the Amazon box on Sunday morning and said, "And there's your iPad, darling." So parenting is full of joys and full of rewards, but is definitely challenging, as I'm sure many people can attest to, particularly when you work in finance and have lots of challenges around sort of hours and those sorts of things.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. I absolutely love that story as well, Hester. So hopefully he's enjoying getting through all 6 of those magazines. Yeah, no, look, thank you so much, ladies, for all of the introduction. And again, Lindsay, thank you so much for your introduction as well. So yeah, I'm going to kick off now with one of our first kind of questions. And this question is actually for you, Laura. So question I wanted to ask you is, what do you feel the importance is of leading with empathy? So we know in our pre-panel discussion that some of you mentioned that they felt a little bit, felt a better leader. They were a better leader, after becoming a parent. How do you feel about that?
So I think, personally, I think I've always been quite an empathetic leader. And developing teams is so important to me. But actually what I've realized since having Willow is that the importance of that to other people, and the importance to me of being led by an empathetic leader. And I think that's key, and it's probably key to, changing all of the world about how we view parents, is actually people being more empathetic in top management positions. So I think, yeah, I think it's very important to ensure that any business is led by someone that's empathetic, and that way we will drive change in the business, especially in relation to how parents are seen in the business and how parents are nurtured in the business, and not just parents, everybody. I think it's very important to lead everybody with empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess just kind of, on the side of that, I mean, did you feel that after you had your daughter, did you feel that kind of changed the way that you became as a leader, I guess, from an empathy kind of perspective?
I think personally, I don't think it did necessarily change me too much. I think what it did for me is just made me realize actually how important that is to the person that I'm trying to lead. Because I think I've always been quite open, and I've always been driving this flexibility, and people need to work when they need to work and all of that. And I'm very keen on that. But actually, I didn't quite realize how important it is to be led like that, because I would have not had leaders like that in my past. And probably, yes, I am a little bit more empathetic, but actually the impact that it has was really shown up to me after I became a parent.
Well, I think Laura's absolutely. I think there's some of the most empathetic leaders I know aren't parents, so I don't think the two are one of the kind. I think the other thing is so since you've had Willow, Laura, we've been in a global pandemic, haven't we? And so actually the importance of what was traditionally known as a female trait or a softer trait, leading with empathy, I think, given all the turbulence that we've had in the last few years, is more important than ever for everybody, men and women, to be leading parents and non-parents in this empathetic way. It's become more and more prevalent, I think.
You're exactly right, Dominique, particularly given, there's a rise in focus on things like mental health and mental well-being. And again, I think, there's a increasing acceptance that that's something that people should be able to come and talk to in the workplace. And so having that empathy and being able to demonstrate that to your teams and to your people, and to make it okay to have a mental health day, I think is really key to fostering a happy and healthy workforce, and physically and mentally healthy workforce.
I think how that empathy showed up then for me was learning to listen more and to be more patient of what answer you get and how others are behaving. I think that's something I learned from my son, to give him the space and time to think through things, think through a sentence before he can finish it with 3 years. But that's something I copied into the workplace, to give people space to answer and think through some topics before actually expecting a straightaway answer.
Amazing, thank you. I mean, I think, it's interesting when you kind of think about these topics, isn't it? And actually, does your kind of outlook on kind of life, or the way that you feel about things, or the way you are a leader, does that kind of change when you become a parent or not? And actually, that's not necessarily specific, I suppose, to just being a female leader. Would that be the same for a male leader as well? So that's a really, really interesting points that you ladies have kind of talked about.
Hester, don't tell Simon I told you this, but my partner has definitely become more emotional since being a father. He cries at the TV a lot more, so there's definitely something in that about. Definitely.
I agree, there's something in there, definitely. They change.
There definitely is. I mean, I can't watch things like Comic Relief or Children Need or anything like that at all without just being complete, just like bursting into tears. So it does something to you, doesn't it? Whether it's in a work fashion or not. But I mean, Jana, what I wanted to kind of ask you was, kind of question was how can we normalize parenthood being a part of many people's careers? How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts?
One thing is that we as leaders should be role model, no matter whether female or male or who's taking parental leave or not. It's really about role modeling, showing what is possible, what creative solutions you can have with kind of starting later, because maybe daycare starts later, but starting again after having dinner, or whatever more creativity and the solutions someone can have. And that's all about trust. And I think actually that all this remote work that we had because of the pandemic situation helped in that direction, because everyone who was so afraid of, oh no, people cannot work from at home because they will not do their work, or whatever fear was behind that, has decreased from my impression, because so many people had to work remote and still they did deliver. So this fear was reduced. And I think this role modeling gives it into the whole organization, or the kind of society of a company, I would say, with different topics as well. It could be elderly care, it could be a sick partner or whatever. So everyone has reasons. It doesn't always have to be a woman taking care of a child, right? It's different reasons. Different people have different stages in their life, and we should be more inclusive of whatever solution we might come up with.
I think Jana's absolutely right. And I think one of the things that we should be role modeling as leaders within finance, but also leaders within our business, is being very transparent about the demands of parenting and managing that. So one of the things I love about working at Lord Ebb is my boss, the CEO, will regularly sort of pop out and be like, right, it's 4:30, I've got to go home now because I've got a parents' evening, or 5 o'clock on a Friday, I'm out the office because I'm going to go and play tennis with my kids, and everyone knows that that's why he's leaving the office, and it's very open discussion. And I think by normalizing being a parent and dealing with parental responsibilities, if we share that that's what we do, people then I think are able to respond in a like sort of minded and like fashioned way, and sort of say, actually I need to go home because I've got to take my kids to the doctor, or at parents' evening, or whatever it is. It just makes juggling those demands just more normal.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, because I think as well, there are sometimes when I speak to my team, for example, or I don't know how you ladies feel about this, but people who are not parents, they're like, well, why should a parent be, have that kind of, why should they be allowed to do that? I don't have a child, but can I not go in, as you say, a carer for a parent, or something else, or some other reason that actually ties into the well-being side of things. So, and I guess just off the back of that, just off the back of that question around kind of normalizing parenthood, do you feel that that's changed over the course of your careers? Since in the last kind of 10 or 15 years, do you think that that's kind of evolved?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, from my perspective, when I was younger, I was in a live events company, which was a lot of socializing, a lot of youngsters, right? So you're with like-minded people in the same phase of life as you are, going out to the pub every night, as opposed to just a Friday night, and going away for the weekends at the live events and all of that. And I think it's definitely a cultural shift, I think, that has happened over the last 5 years. But I think it's also a combination of, moving from one part of the business to another part of the business. It's just been with, I mean, dare I say, sort of older people in the business that have experience of that. And then they do show more empathy. And it's definitely something I think that's also culturally shifted. With the UK, I mean, we'll talk later about the shared parental leave and normalizing a lot of that. And COVID's definitely helped in a way to facilitate that environment in which you feel comfortable enough to kind of do your own thing and be transparent about it and not have to hide behind it. And because a lot of people are in that position, and it might not be that you have to go pick up your child, it might be something different, but everyone is more transparent at the moment. Even more so actually in a way of remote working, because you're so worried that people are going to think you're not working. So, you know, you always actually, it's more so now the way you'll go, I'm just popping out for 10 minutes to, you know, to do something, as opposed to in the office, you just normally get out and go for 10 minutes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can, and I can kind of completely agree with you on that one. So, I mean,
just on that, Emel,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. I think one of the interesting points that we talked about in the sort of pre-panel discussion was that actually, I think certainly the sort of feedback, I think, from the ladies on the panel was that we all had quite supportive bosses, we had quite supportive workplaces, and that we felt that being a parent was very much something that was supported. But actually where a lot of the challenge came was from outside of the workplace, where, you know, schools and nurseries, the default is still to phone the mum to say, your kid's sick, or, you know, this has happened, you need to come and pick them up. And it's almost trying to normalize it, not just across the workplace, but across organizations outside of that, schools, nurseries, etc. The default isn't just to call mum straight away, because, you know, that's what mum's role is, to sit at home and wait for that sort of call from the school. And I think those are the biggest challenges, and certainly those are the times when I feel most guilty, when you have to say, well, you know, I can't come back from the city to go and pick him up from school, you're going to have to call dad. And it's almost that sort of silent disapproving end of the line type of thing that you get from people who don't work in the city.
I know, and you know what, this is what we said last time, didn't we? Because I think when we had this discussion, and every single one of our heads did this, you know, I've certainly had it with my son's school calling me, you know, Mrs. Elliott, steals my maiden name, you know, Mrs. Elliott, you know, your son's coughed, you need to come and pick him up. And I'm like, what? You know, he's asthmatic. They're like, no, you need to come and pick him up. And you know, I'm in London, I can't do that, so call my husband please, you know. And they're like, oh, we don't have his number. So it is, you know, but it's like, how do we remove that kind of stigma almost, and how do we normalize that through things like, you know, the channels through schools, you know, just actually through society in general, you know. And you know, and it's not just about the workplaces, you absolutely rightly said, Hester, it is actually about normalizing that through society in general, and not seeing the mum as the go-to, and actually how do we share that across parents generally, which actually brings me on really nicely. And Alison, this is, I know, is a topic that you feel really passionately about, but actually, how does the modern family unit or non-traditional family fit into the modern workplace? You know, for things like shared parental leave, you know, single parent policies and things like that.
Yeah, so I mean, I can speak from experience here. So my husband and I did the shared parental leave. I think it's an incredible incentive. We are very fortunate to be in a country that has this policy in place. You know, looking at the US, they've got nothing in place for anybody. I think a lot of people aren't actually aware that this exists, or that it works really pragmatically. So, I mean, what happened is, you know, it's 6 months in, I suffered from postpartum depression. You know, motherhood didn't necessarily come very naturally to me. I struggled with breastfeeding, and I was just feeling sort of really down, and I wanted to kind of reclaim my identity in a way. You know, I just become this mother, and I actually wanted to reclaim the identity of, actually, you know what, I'm Alison, I'm in finance, who happens to also be a mother. So, and being in finance, I think everyone can agree, you know, there's a beginning and end, things balance. It's all very black and white, and it's it's beautiful. And then comes a child, and it's just gorgeous chaos everywhere, which is very difficult for someone, I think, in finance specifically. And I'm pointing this out because of our roles, right? Everything has to, you know, it's accurate, it's 2%, and with children, that just gets thrown out of the window. So I really struggled with that, and not being able to, you know what my day was going to be like, not being able to plan my day, and things would just be thrown out of windows. So I wanted to return to work a bit earlier. And then I spoke to my husband, and we did the shared parental leave, and his company was incredibly supportive. His company is AXA Insurance, which is French based, which, you know, is French companies are fantastic around family initiatives as well. And he took over for the next 3 to 4 months when I returned to work. And, you know, I just feel like that gave him an opportunity that not many dads get. You know, and I think, you know, to the point about normalizing culture, we have to normalize stay-at-home dads. We have to empower women. We have to be able to normalize and promote the fact that dads can belong at home as well, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, we've got a CEO who is very hands-on. He's a very hands-on dad, and he's always picking up the kids and dropping them off. And I think it's just a great example. And you know, we often talk about women's rights, and you know, we want more, but actually I think we need to give the men more, in a way, of more responsibility, more ownership of things, and empower them to be fathers, and allow us to be more balanced between parents as well as career individuals. So, you know, I'd highly recommend the shared parental leave to look into. It was so easy to do. You know, both of us spoke to the HR departments. It was no problem. There's 2 benefits here. The one obviously being that, you know, I could return to work much sooner, and then there was a financial, you know, it's a sort of opportunity here, because it's almost like the maternity can reset, the paternity can reset on the father's side. So there's definitely something to look into if that's something that you wish to explore, that you don't wish to take that full time off. And also another thing is you can break it up, so you can switch in and out. You know, you can do shared parental leave blocks, so it doesn't need to be you do the first half, your partner does the second half. But yeah, so it's a fantastic opportunity that is available to us. And I'm only aware of me ever doing it. I haven't met anybody else who has done it, and that's why I wanted to talk about it session, because I want to make people aware that it does exist and it does work. It's easy to do. It's not difficult, and the companies are we were fortunate that our companies were very supportive of that.
So important. We can't have equality at the workplace and fight for gender equality at the workplace and not have it at home.
Exactly.
And whilst I'm not advocating everyone reviews their relationships in the state of divorces, actually there is definitely something around that, breaking the bias, which is why it was such a great theme this year for International Women's Day, and then also the policies in place. Alison, I think you're absolutely spot on. But there's also something in what you said around postpartum depression, because we are very career orientated women, and Hester, you mentioned something last time we spoke around it's so all or nothing, maternity leave and then working, and that's why the flexibility to return on a part-time basis and that sort of stuff is so important, because we, you know, it's impossible to go high speed like that and then to nothing, and talking about nappies and how much sleep you got and which breast you use to breastfeed. It's all or nothing, and it's impossible. So the flexible working also plays a part in that space, I think.
And I think just sort of building on Alison's point about choosing to go back a little earlier, I think it certainly this time round I'm making a conscious decision to go back earlier, because similar to Alison, all the things that she said, both in terms of this panel discussion and in pre-panel discussion, really resonated with me. The feeling that I didn't know what I was doing and everything was out of control, and you know, I don't like that. Dominique asked me whether I was planning for, and that's probably just answered all of that for you. But I think there's still judgment amongst women and judgment amongst other parents about some of those personal decisions that people choose to take, whether that's you take a year off, whether you don't return to work, whether you go back after a short period of time. And I think one of our responsibilities as parents, and in particular as women leaders in finance, is being very open-minded that people's circumstances are very individual and very personal, and that people should be able to make whatever decision is right for them and their family without fear of any judgment on whatever those decisions may be.
Yeah,
it's not only the judgmental between parents or also at workplace. I think it's the whole society that plays in. I mean, Switzerland is especially bad here because it's really still the expectation that a woman is at home with a child. And that's also how you are introduced. So if you tell someone you're 100% working, they look at you like, what are you doing? You're expected to be at home with a child. And these kind of questions like, so you work 100% and you have a child. And just this critical face going with it is like, yes, why not? Why are you not doing the same? So what is it about? And there's so many things. For example, getting money for building a house. So when I was building the first house with something beginning of 30, the bank took out, I think 40 or 50% of my income to calculate what money we could get, what loan we could get. Because they said, well, you're in your 30s. So if you have child, then you're not supposed to go back to work. So we can't calculate with your 100% income. I was like, well, it's so unbelievable that sometimes you sit there in these meetings and you feel like I'm in a movie or something. There must be a camera on somewhere. It's just not real what's going on here. And that's happening. I mean, tax-wise, it's not beneficial if both are working. You cannot deduct a lot of the childcare you have to pay for. So it's really, there's so many small things throughout society, governance, tax systems, whatever, that are not beneficial. So many things to change, and it just takes time.
It's so interesting hearing about all the different experiences, you know, and actually how different, as you say, what you're experiencing in Switzerland to what, I suppose, how far we have come over here in the UK. You know, and I think businesses and society is definitely, if we look at the stats kind of earlier on, we can actually see how things are shifting. You know, just in the space of 5 years, things have shifted by 50%. And it doesn't sound like that is, you know, I think in Switzerland, I've also had in other parts of Europe as well, that is not something that is changing at any kind of pace at all. But Hester, I kind of wanted to ask you, you know, what do you think businesses can do to break workplace bias for parents? You know, is this just business specific, or actually are we talking about society in general here?
I think a lot of the points that we've been talking about as we've gone through these discussions point to things that business and society need to be thinking about in terms of breaking that bias for parents. I think in terms of, from a workplace perspective, I think the need for flexibility and the need for empathy and understanding is really key. The ability for parents to be able to talk about the demands of parenting, but also I think sort of just focusing on finance for a minute, it's, you know, we are very deadline driven, and that can be very challenging. It can be, you know, your reporting deadline isn't going to change because you've got, you know, a school play you need to go to. So there's working together to sort of work around that and supporting everyone in terms of being able to balance that sort of parental guilt with not being there for your child for certain things. I mean, we talked about, and I do think actually a lot of it's societal, but businesses have a place and an opportunity to normalize it. So actually you should be able to have a conversation which is, you know what, my school has somewhat inconveniently organised an assembly which is at 9:15 in the morning, which is the most inconvenient time because obviously you're not going into the office after that. And this is where workplaces, I think, almost have to overcompensate for the societal expectations. So workplaces have to say, well, that's okay, you know, work from home that day, work around that, that's fine. But I think workplace bias goes beyond parenting, and I think it's really key that we support everyone in their well-being journeys. And one of the things that I'm really proud of that we've done at Lord Adventure is ultimately go sort of do away with sort of traditional sick policy and introduce the idea and concept of a well-being policy, which enables parents to take time off if they need to care for sick children. It enables people to take time off sick for themselves, or it doesn't even need to be a child. It can be, I need to go and, you know, look after my elderly relative for the day, or take them for their COVID jab, or whatever it is. I think we just need to appreciate that the demands on life are just ever expanding, and those demands on both women, and I think there's an increasing expectation now on men to also play a sort of much bigger part in family life. And obviously if women are going to have more of a career, it becomes a necessity for men to step up a little bit more as well. So I think there's still a lot to do perhaps around the breaking the bias for men.
Yeah, I think it's almost kind of flipping it on its head, isn't it? It's like there's, Dominic, as you just kind of said earlier on, it's like there's actually so much that's being done to break the bias, I guess, around women, but actually almost kind of doing a 360. It's like what actually needs to be done to break the bias for men? Because, you know, if I think about, my husband's a very hands-on dad. You know, we share parental workload and things like that, you know, but I know a lot of men that maybe wouldn't actually feel comfortable with it, or actually, you know, feel that their role is very much a kind of, you know, that kind of alpha male type. You know, or sometimes there might be men that, you know, actually want to play more of a role, but they're just not able to because of, you know, either workplace or society bias towards them. So, you know, it's an interesting thing to actually kind of, you know, think about. But I mean, I know that Hester, again, you were kind of saying that, you know, that Lord Deb has done so many things in terms of breaking their work kind of place biases, and also by just actually supporting, you know, returning parents, you know, women in particular, I think it was, you know, from maternity, around really, really exciting incentives to actually help kind of normalize that, or the reintroduction, you know, back into work following maternity, which I think is a really interesting, you know, very interesting from what you said before.
No, absolutely. I think, you know, and we touched on a little bit earlier that actually a lot of time women and parents are delaying having children because actually you almost feel like you've got to wait until you start earning a certain amount of money so you can provide a certain lifestyle and can afford the childcare and those sorts of things. Because I mean, let's be honest, regardless of what route of childcare you're going down, the amount you're paying out every month to fund that's really quite significant.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we looked at and we said, look, you know, women are a really valuable part of our organisation and have a huge contribution to creating a sustainable workforce and culture, and that culture of empathy. And so we have introduced a policy whereby we support women who want to come back, and we give women it's up to sort of women who come back before 12 months, they get an extra week of pay for every month that they come back to go towards childcare costs. So it provides that flexibility of choice to make individual decisions. And then ultimately for all women, once they've been back at work for 6 months, we give them a 6-week pay bonus, again, to recognise that there are, you know, that there's opportunity cost of coming back to work, but also that children are really expensive. And so, you know, we want to contribute to people being able to have that flexibility of choice.
I think it's, you know, and again, I just remember, you know, from our panel discussion, pre-panel discussion, you know, when we were talking about, you know, do you need to be at a certain point in your career? And is that because it's normalized to go off on a maternity leave because you're at a certain age, or because you're at a certain level in your career, or is that because you feel that you can afford it at that point? You know, how would you feel as somebody, you know, who was in their mid, you know, I don't know necessarily we'll talk about ages, but you know, somebody who was at the more early parts of their career, wanted to have a child, but actually didn't feel that they were able to financially, or because they hadn't got to a certain point in their career yet, you know. And actually and hopefully the whole point of actually doing this is to empower that, you know, younger women to feel that they can have a career and they can have a baby as well. So it's so great to hear that, you know, businesses, particularly FTSE 250 businesses in the city, which I can imagine, you know, 15, 20 years ago was just so different. You know, so it's brilliant to hear that these initiatives are being introduced.
It's so, honestly, the Lord Adventure sounds fantastic. I want to steal all their policies, but there is something in that. Our bodies were meant to have babies when we started our periods. That's when we were supposed to have it. And now the flip side of the, can I afford the childcare? You know, my nursery fees the same as my mortgage, and I've got a big mortgage. So yeah, it's and so I think there is definitely something in that, and the really dark side of this cost of childcare is not just balancing career, but then the sort of the baby loss, the increased fertility problems and things that people have when they do wait, or people not being able to have a second child because they waited that long. So in answer to what would you advise? I would think doing accounting exams as a baby, nigh impossible. But do before or after. My dad always says to me, you will never have enough money for a baby. And I think we'd all agree, whilst it's challenging, it's the most rewarding job I've ever done. So I would say go for it. If you're waiting, you'll never have enough money. And your money, just go for it. And I think we definitely need to think about governmental policies around cost of childcare and accessibility of childcare.
It is.
I know it's high on the agenda.
Because it's ludicrously expensive, as you say. It is. It's the cost of, and some people are just not in a position to be able to do it, which is another topic entirely. But I guess, Dominique, that kind of leads me on to actually one of my final questions. That's actually just in regards to something more specific around finance. So, how do you feel that organisations in the finance industry can invest in a culture of belonging for parents?
I think so. Belonging is so important, not just for parents, but for everybody. And there's three things I would go down. One is this topic that I could talk about for hours, which is that sort of diverse and inclusive recruitment and culture. And I think a place where everyone can come, be themselves, and be celebrated for being themselves, be heard, be listened. So that culture, I think, is so important. And there's lots of tangible steps we can do as leaders in our space, catering for introverts and extroverts, lots of flexible comms and different things, employee surveys, reacting really positively and proactively to employee surveys. So lots of stuff we can do around that, recruitment policies and promotional policies. So that's one of the things. The second things around belonging, I think, is the networks. So the power of a good D&I network. So having a black network, having a trans network, having a parenting network. I think if they're used properly, you can get that sense of that safe space where people can form really great relationships and feel that they're not alone. But they can also, if they're really well used, they can influence policy and improve policies in the business as well. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is that flexible working. So for everybody, not just parents. So you can have your home self and your work self, and you can be your whole self, and you don't have to compromise in any part of your life. And I think that is where you'll get that sense of belonging and loyalty to an organisation, parent or otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know how everyone else feels about that, in terms of whether their businesses currently have actually, the D&I, I think it's such a huge topic at the moment across, as we say, it's not just, there's so many different kind of pillars of diversity that we can talk about, as we say, race, gender, sexual orientation, it's so many different things and so many different pillars. And it is about bringing your authentic self to work and being able to do that. And I suppose, if you don't mind me kind of throwing it out to anybody else who'd like to answer this question, how do you feel that maybe your businesses or, have, I suppose, driven that kind of diversity that Dominique's been talking about?
I think there's one aspect that helped, at least in the more corporate areas I worked in, was to not only talk about the self-fulfilling piece or the happiness piece about it, but just the financial need. So we're all facing shortage in skilled labor, right? So we need actually skilled women in the workplace. So it's not only about what we would like to have or whether we feel that society is going in the right direction or not. It's clearly demonstrated that people who are more happy or more, feel more comfortable at their workplace are more productive. So there's a lot of financial aspects behind it. It's much more expensive to hire someone new and get them on board, a couple of 10,000 of Swiss francs or pounds, versus keeping them happy when they are already working and adding value to the team. So there are lots of, going back to our financial background, really financial aspects to see in that area as well, and how teams develop, how organizations develop, more agile workplaces, more flexible workplaces, that all plays into this. And it helped, especially in the corporate world where, on the top level, finance leaders are usually male, white, mid-50, looking all the same, right? So blue shirt and whatever. that you get to a different picture, and that they start thinking about it, right? It's, oh, we can save some money here with doing something good. Well, then maybe we do something. And to be honest, that's like certain percentages of females in leadership positions. I don't like to be on a position because of a quote. But in the end, if we need that to get to a certain level and get to a more equal system, then it might be a solution. It's definitely better to have it a bit faster in pace versus waiting for the next decades until something happens.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I mean, you know, so kind of many interesting topics that we can kind of discuss here. And, you know, I think that we could genuinely talk for hours and hours and hours about so many different threads that kind of come out from this. You know, and I think what's kind of come out from the discussion really is that, you know, there are so many initiatives that have been brought into the workplace to support. We're not talking about just women here, but actually supporting parents. But actually, maybe it is actually more about supporting women. And maybe what we're not necessarily doing at the moment is actually supporting men throughout that. So, so many different experiences for you, Jana, than what you're having in Switzerland to what we experience over here in the UK. And so it's been, you know, it's been really interesting to kind of hear your kind of thoughts on everything, kind of versus maybe what we might experience over here, particularly with businesses in London as well. I mean, we're kind of coming close to the end of the discussion now. So one thing I kind of wanted to end on was for anybody listening was to, if I could again kind of go around the panel and just ask if you have any advice or tips, you know, to parents who are about to embark, you know, on their parenthood journey, or similarly to you, Hester and Dominique, you know, who are about to have their second or, second or third child maybe. So any pearls of wisdom from any of you on the panel, please?
I would say, oh, sorry, Dominique, you go.
No, Laura, please, you go.
Okay. I would say to anyone that's thinking about having a child or having a child and worried about the career, I would say just do everything with confidence. I think one of the key things that I've picked up from these discussions is that women having confidence to push their agenda is very, very important. And everything sort of comes back to, you know, we are the people that needs to change the world. And we can't do that if we don't have confidence to do so. So I would say that, you know, if you want to breastfeed. If you don't apologize to anyone for it. I personally didn't. If you want to go back to work after 6 months, do. If you don't. And I think that for me is the key piece of advice that I would give anyone, is that we're not going to change the world if we don't have confidence in what we are doing ourselves. And once we start to actually do that, then I think that's key.
I absolutely love that. That's amazing, because I know that you experienced that yourself, or it's not that, you know, but just in terms of your return to work after, I think it was 5.5 months, you know, and it's about that, you know, do what's right for you, right? So have the confidence to do what you feel comfortable with. So,
and, I mean, even now if I'm in the gym in the evening, more than likely, and it's always not always, but a woman that says, "Oh, where's your child?" And I'm like, "Well, my husband has her."
Not at the gym.
I'm not, you know, yeah, not at the gym. She's in bed. But it's just the confidence to actually do that. And I think it's key, because if I didn't, I would take that as like, oh my God, I'm a bad mother, and run home, and nothing would ever change.
No. Just get running though. You get you running.
Just building on that, my little boy said to me the other day, he's not little, he's 12, so you know, I keep saying he's taller than me and all those sorts of things, but my son said to me the other day, he said they were doing their language autobiographies, like, "Mummy, what was my first word?" And I said, and I have to confess that I had a bit of a blank, and I said, "Well, it was probably daddy." And he said, "Well, that's really boring." And I said, "Well, you know, a lot of kids' first word is daddy." And he's like, "Why is that, Mum?" And I was like, "Well, that's because typically," and this was 12 years ago, you know, typically mums stay at home with the dad, so mums talk a lot about daddy. My son did not miss a beat. He said to me, "Well, Mum, the silver lining of your job and, you know, working long hours and juggling a career is that your next child's first word will probably be mama." And there was a little bit of me that thought, you know, I could sit here and feel really guilty that, you know, that's his perception, that I work long hours and, you know, I juggle a career and I'm not always at all the school events. Or I could think, you know what, actually, you know, our children are going to grow up just thinking it's perfectly normal for women to work and balance the job and have a career, not just a job, but a career, and have demands and balance those things. And I thought, you know what, I think it's great that he understands that that is just part of life these days. And I think we shouldn't feel guilty about it. As Laura says, it's all about having confidence in what you do, because we're also inspiring the future generations to be very accepting that there's lots of different routes available to people and they are all absolutely fine.
So true. And I think, you know, I'm in a similar situation where I get, mummy, why, you know, why aren't you here at this play? Or, you know, I'm the absent parent. I think when my son last year, one of the mums in the year, I think the year below or year above, was like, oh, are you new to the school? And I was like, no, I've been here for 3 years. So, and she was quite embarrassed by that. But, you know, it's, no, I think that all really good advice. Anything else? I mean, Alison, Jana, Dominique, any kind of pearls of wisdom to finish it off with?
I'd say just really be kind to yourself. You know, just manage expectations on yourself. It is a big transition when you have your first, and I'm sure there's a transition involved when you have your second. But you know, it is particularly groundbreaking when it first happens. And as I said, you know, just be kind to yourself. And I wasn't, and that's why I'm saying, like, you know, if I was kinder to myself, I think I would have been in a more calmer position and been able to perhaps enjoy those first few months a little bit more, and just don't lead into kind of peer pressure, and whether it's returning to work, whether it's breastfeeding, whether it's anything, you know, just do what you want to do, but also just look after yourself, because I remember going to the doctor and I had developed a massive infection, and she said, you know, you can't look after your child if you don't look after yourself. And I'm like, well, you know, I've got him sort out and he's got to eat and he's got to do this. And she's like, you can't do any of that at the moment because you haven't looked after yourself. So I would just drive home about, you know, looking after yourself mentally, but also physically afterwards. Your body is made to do what it's done, but it takes time to heal as well. And yeah, so that's pretty much my parting thing. And also just one thing, being in a business, think about hiring mums. You know, because, you know, when we were looking for a part-time legal counsel, I actually thought, you know what the perfect person is? It's a mum. So I was like, you know, juggling school and kids during the day, and then in the evenings, just like responding to terms and conditions and just doing all of that work in the evenings. And our legal counsel for digital theatre is a mum of 3, and she's incredible. And, you know, when the one goes to nursery and the other one's at school, she'll do an hour's work, and then she'll do, and I just think also as responsible leaders in a business, we should also be more proactive around looking for things in the business that actually really suit a mom and a role, and she's really well respected in the business as well, so it's good.
Amazing, fantastic. That's definitely another topical conversation we could talk about for a really long time, particularly working in recruitment. So, Dominique, lastly.
I would say before you go on maternity leave, or if you've got someone that you're managing maternity leave of, before they go, make themselves a trophy cabinet. So highlight all your wins, all your achievements, document them, have them tangible, because I think you'll need them to draw on from a confidence perspective, and you'll be waylaid with other things. So I think create yourself a trophy cabinet before you go is a very practical one. And the other one, just leaning on what Alison said, be kind to yourself, but you will have days where everything goes wrong, where your childcare falls through the roof, where your baby's sick all over you on your entrance into work. You will have days where it all goes wrong. Fear not, you are not alone. And for everyone, we're all doing all right. We're doing the best we can. We're all just making do. People might look like they've got it all together. They certainly don't. So yeah, we're all doing all okay. So just leaning on what Alison said, be kind to yourself and expect those days where everything goes terribly wrong, and then some.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jana. I don't know whether you wanted to the last words.
Yeah, but I can only recommend to look out for a mentor early on, to have someone, especially in the corporate world, that's very helpful, but also in other businesses, can also be someone outside of your own organization, but someone with a bit more experience. You can discuss concerns with, for example, because looking back into my career, fear was my biggest problem in the end. It was not actually when to go on maternity leave or when having a child. It was the fear of what impact will it have financially or on the career or on my personal relationships, whatever. And to have someone to discuss these fears and concerns with respect to your career or with respect to your personal development is very helpful and can support you a lot mentally, but also career-wise, especially also when you then come back from maternity leave, you have someone to support you in getting back into your role.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, look, I think that kind of concludes the kind of discussion. I cannot thank you ladies enough for, oh no, my apologies. Sorry, so there is actually one last poll. Very, very quickly, back to work strategy. So how can organizations help new parents transition back to work? So enhanced flexible working, remote hybrid working, workplace support, or employee health insurance. Very, very, very quick. Over to you on the panel, if you wouldn't mind kind of giving your quick thoughts on that one. Sorry, Dominique.
I'd say 1 and 2, flexible and remote working.
Yeah.
So both parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Laura, the same. Yeah. Ali, any?
Yeah, the same. I mean, employee health insurance, I don't feel is kind of a top priority in a country where we're fortunate enough to have the NHS. Yeah, definitely flexible working, remote hybrid.
Brilliant, fantastic. Jana?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the insurance topic is different in Switzerland anyway, but it's really the remote for both, especially for the dads. That's more supportive in the first couple of months. Than for yourself, essentially.
Sure. Hester, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm fully aligned with the ladies on the panel. I think flexible working is really key to being able to juggle the demands of parenthood. Yeah.
I would have to agree as well. So look, thank you so much. Everybody who has joined, to all of you ladies on the panel, you know, it's been an absolute pleasure to host you today, and to kind of hear all of your thoughts, your pearls of wisdom, and also I just also like to kind of say how candid you've all been in terms of some of your experiences. You know, I really do appreciate how honest and open you've been. I think, you know, being able to inspire and empower, you know, women, you know, can only come from actually sharing our experiences. And I really do thank you for being so honest. So I think we're going to move on to, I'm going to ask now Lucy, because I'm not 100% sure, Lucy, we're going to move to a different room, is it? For any of those that would like to have a Q&A with our panel, please do stay on if you are able to. No, sorry, to change to, apologies. There is the networking, the link for the Q&A. If you are able to come and join the Q&A, please do so. And hopefully we shall see you there shortly. But look, thank you everyone for your participation. It's been really great to hear it today.
Thank you, Amal.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Cheers. Bye.